I've wanted kids, but it's your fault I've had to hold back. You're defective." My husband of 20 years threw these cruel words at me. I realized I couldn't carry on with him. He's off daydreaming about his new marriage. God must have been watching, witnessing this devilish act. That's why something happened to my husband. My name is Lisa. I'm 45 years old. I work as a secretary at a law firm. We're nearing 20 years of marriage. We've led a modest life, just the two of us. We've always wanted children, but we couldn't have any. The problems seemed to be mostly with me. I went for treatments while working, exhausting myself physically, emotionally, and financially, but to no avail. We decided to give up when I turned 40. My husband wanted kids till the end and urged me to continue treatments, but I was at my limit. The pain was unbearable, and the money was just draining away. The situation was terrifying. After all, they say you need $200,000 for retirement. It felt wasteful to pour more money into it. Why don't we stop the treatments and just live as a couple? We can save money and take some luxurious trips since we don't have kids, I suggested, and my husband, albeit reluctantly, agreed. From then on, we decided to enjoy our lives as a couple. Still, seeing children's photos on TV shows or greeting cards, I felt a twinge of regret. Even now, 5 years after stopping treatments, I carry guilt and remorse for not being able to have children. Then, one day, I decided to attend a school reunion after about 10 years. My husband said I should take a break, so I decided to stay overnight near the venue. It felt like a mini vacation. I realized I'd hardly ever been out alone since we got married. My life had been consumed by infertility treatments. A little luxury now and then is okay, right? At the venue, I enjoyed catching up with old friends. "Lisa, long time no see. How are you? Don't you seem a bit slimmer than before?" Indeed, I had lost about 22 pounds over the last decade. "I'm so jealous. Since I got married and had kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds. Even such a trivial conversation from a friend stings a bit. "Lisa, any kids?" "No, we couldn't. It's just the two of us with my husband." "Oh, I'm sorry for asking such an awkward question." "No worries. Let's just have fun." I tried to keep the atmosphere lively and cheerful. Speaking of which, my son was recently almost caught up in a marriage scam. A scam? I was taken aback by my classmates' words. Yes, he was asked to lend $20,000 because they were getting married, but it didn't go through. What? What happened then? My son couldn't afford to pay that much money, so he came to us, his parents, for advice. That's how we discovered the scam. In the end, the woman disappeared. That's a terrifying story. There are some pretty awful women out there, really scary. A marriage scam. I was a bit shocked that something like that could happen so close to home. Her son now has a new girlfriend, and the parents seemed relieved. The reunion went on smoothly and eventually came to an end. Instead of going to the after party, I returned to my hotel and enjoyed a nightcap by myself. Come to think of it, I forgot to check in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m., he should still be up. I tried to call home, but no matter how many times I let it ring, my husband didn't answer. Maybe he had already gone to sleep. Well, I was going back tomorrow anyway, so it wasn't a problem. Still, I had an uneasy feeling. Was it a woman's intuition? I had a bad feeling for some reason. From then on, my husband started coming home extremely late on weekdays, and he started coming home drunk almost every night. "Hey, I'm home." "You, coming home so drunk. Are you okay?" In a drunken stupor, my husband threw his shoes off and sprawled out on the living room floor. "Shut up, I'm home. Show some respect." Respect for what, exactly? His slovenly state? While picking up my husband's discarded socks and shirt, I kept my thoughts to myself. Alyssa was cute, wasn't she? You know, if you were as young as Alyssa. That's what my husband said. Who the hell is Alyssa? What does he mean if I were young? By the time I thought to question him, he was already fast asleep. Could he be cheating on me? My unease from that day was becoming more and more like conviction. No, my husband is a decent man. There's no way he could. It must be drunken nonsense, I reassured myself. But then there's my husband who leaves early in the morning on weekends and doesn't return until late at night. I'll be back later. Take care. And then he comes home drunk, as always. With this happening every week, even I had to intervene. You seem to be going out drinking almost every day recently. Are we okay financially? Mind your own business. It's my money and I'll do what I want with it. It's the savings from my bachelor days. But we need to save up for our old age or we'll be in trouble in the future. Why don't you save up then? Well, I've spent quite a bit on treatments. That's because you're defective. Even if he was drunk, I couldn't believe he'd speak to me that way. I was starting to notice my husband's changes. Did I become more submissive since I stopped treatment? My husband's disparaging remarks about me were increasing. Since you can't have kids, you should show your affection for me instead. And with that, I could feel my love for him diminishing as he splurged and behaved selfishly. He used to be so kind, caring for me when I was having a hard time with treatments. Will he ever return to being that kind of husband? What is a marriage, really? After 20 years, I started to question this. However, things took a sudden turn. Lisa, we need to talk. I came home from work to find my husband sitting on the living room sofa, looking serious. What is it? You're being all formal. I want a divorce. What? You're joking, right? Why would you say that all of a sudden? The thought that my husband was considering a divorce had never crossed my mind. Yes, I knew we had to reconsider our relationship as a married couple, but I hadn't thought about divorce. Was my husband thinking of divorce before I even considered it? Out of the blue, you want a divorce? What's going on? I confronted my husband, seeking answers. We've been a couple for 20 years, haven't we? Let's discuss this properly. However, he looked at me with contempt. You're really clueless, aren't you? He sighed heavily, glaring at me. What do you mean? I've always wanted children for these past 20 years. And because I got stuck with a defective piece like you, I've been robbed of the opportunity to become a father. Have you ever considered my feelings? As he spoke, he pounded the table with an arrogant tone. That's not fair. We discussed together and decided to stop the treatments, remember? I was never okay with that. I've always wanted a child. Why hadn't he told me that then? I was on the verge of tears, overwhelmed by sadness and frustration. Well, if you sign the divorce papers, I won't have anything else to say. Proudly, he pushed the divorce papers on the table towards me. I've actually already decided to remarry. What? Remarry? Yeah, with a 20-year-old girl. A girl? Are you saying you've been having an affair? No way. I plan on marrying her as soon as we're divorced. He announced this with a smug satisfaction. A 20-year-old girl was marrying my husband? This couldn't be happening. Alyssa, she's sweet and cute. The perfect wife. Not like you. Alyssa. That was the name my husband had mentioned that day. Woman's intuition was not to be underestimated. I felt a sense of self-satisfaction, but this wasn't the time for self-praise. And then my husband showed me a picture of his adorable Alyssa. Upon taking a closer look, I nearly burst out laughing. This has to be a joke. Something like this was impossible. What? He noticed my strange reaction, but I quickly regained my composure. I felt it was too soon to let him in on the joke, so I immediately composed myself. So you really want a child that badly? Yes, because you can't give birth. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You will agree to divorce, won't you? Well, I suppose there's no choice. I pretend to look more upset than I really am. Sure, I was upset when he first brought up the divorce, but now, with his sheer stupidity, I feel like it would be right to divorce him immediately. Yes, I should leave a man like this sooner or later. I feel as if I've been given divine guidance to do so. I sign the divorce papers and leave my husband behind. I'll bet he'll regret this soon enough. Well, let's just watch and see. Fast forward a year after the divorce. Lisa, please help me. A shabby-looking man approaches me on my way home from work. Excuse me, who are you? I genuinely don't recognize him. It's me, Lisa. I need your help. It's my ex-husband. Long time no see. I'm taken aback by how much he's changed. His cheeks are sunken, and he's dressed shabbily. Please, Alice, introduce me to your company's lawyer. I can't just do that out of the blue. Apparently, my ex-husband is having money troubles. I could sort of tell from his appearance, but I never thought he would become a completely different person within a year. If it's your first time, consultation is free. Free? But if you want to hire them, you'll have to pay their fee. I don't have that kind of money. Please, help me. What on earth happened? I decided to listen to his story at a nearby cafe out of pity. Well, actually, before he could say another word, I cut him off. Did that girl, Alyssa, run off? How did you know? Just as I thought. When my ex-husband showed me a picture of a girl named Alyssa, it clicked. That girl looked exactly like the one who conned a classmate's son at a reunion. At that reunion, the classmate was saying, "I can't forgive that woman," and showed her picture around, warning everyone. I think her name was Sally and she was about 22. Well, her age and name are probably fake. It makes sense. The swindler wouldn't use her real name, of course. You knew about Alyssa, didn't you? Well, I guess you could say I knew, but what happened? When I asked my husband for the details, this was the story he gave. He met a woman named Alyssa about a year ago in a nightclub. My husband, who has always wanted children, seemed to have been venting such thoughts in his conversations with her. That's when Alyssa said, "I can have a child for you." The two gradually deepened their relationship after that. My husband would go to the club almost every weekday and would date Alyssa outside the club on weekends, then return to the club. In doing so, he ended up using $10,000 from his savings that he had accumulated when he was single. But Alyssa was so sweet. She never asked for expensive things even when we were outside the club. She was just happy drinking with me at the club. She was different from the stereotypical opportunistic club girls you often hear about. She didn't need designer goods or jewelry. She was satisfied if I was there drinking with her at the club. She was hardworking and sincere. We had agreed not to touch each other's savings from when we were single, so I never noticed anything. I thought it was his money and he could use it as he pleased. I had no idea he was spending that much. And then Alyssa showed her true colors. "I want to get married, but I have debts, so I need to repay them, and it's about $20,000. Then my husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her. They moved in together right after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her night work and rarely came home. And then she quit her job at the club and disappeared. Of course, she took all the money and ran. Just how foolish can he be? I started to feel pathetic for having been married to such a man for 20 years. "Did you make a promissory note?" "A what?" When I asked, my husband looked puzzled. "You lent her money, didn't you? Didn't you get a note?" "We were going to be a couple, so I didn't do such a thing." "Really? So doesn't it mean you just gave her the money? Is that so?" "In this case, it seems like you donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of goodwill. This woman must be a pro. In the case of donations, if the amount exceeds $11,000 in a year, gift tax is imposed. Depending on the case, the receiver might be taxed, so Alyssa just took $20,000 in cash and vanished. And she split the money into 2 parts across 2 different years. That way she wouldn't exceed the $11,000 limit and could avoid taxes. The reason my husband thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew the law well. So what should I do? I don't know, maybe consult a lawyer? It'll cost you though. Upon hearing that, my husband's shoulders slumped. I've used up all my savings from my single days. The woman I loved ran away from me. I can't tell the company that the marriage is off after I've already told them about remarrying. I boasted about getting a younger wife. Isn't that his own doing? Although I thought that, seeing his pitiful situation, I couldn't say anything. Lisa, it's my fault. Please, come back to me. I realized after you were gone, you were the only one who cared about me. I don't need kids anymore. I'll let you do as you like. You must have been lonely too, right? Does my husband still misunderstand that I still love him? That matter ended half a year ago in my mind, so I confronted him with reality. You know, it's been a year. What's with this sudden change of heart? Isn't it a little too late now? Lisa, are you going to abandon me? Well, it was you who pushed for our divorce in the first place, remember? Lisa, you're the only one I can rely on. My ex-husband looked utterly exhausted. I decided to show him a little mercy. All right then, shall I call up a lawyer friend of mine? Lisa, thank you. I knew I could count on you. With tears welling up in his eyes, my ex-husband seemed genuinely grateful. And the one who came to the coffee shop was Mr. Johnson, the lawyer from my company. John, over here. Lisa, who's this? He's an acquaintance. Seems he's in a bit of a bind. Is that so? Nice to meet you. The name's Johnson. My ex-husband seemed somewhat perplexed by our overly familiar demeanor. You see, we've been dating for the past 6 months. Now what was it you needed advice on? As I finished speaking, my ex-husband looked as if he was in a daze. No, well, I think that'll be it for today. Suddenly snapping back to reality, my ex-husband hurriedly left the coffee shop. In the end, he couldn't afford to hire a lawyer, and resigned himself to his fate. Rumor has it that his company has been abuzz with talk of his unfortunate situation, left by his soon-to-be wife, ignored by his ex-wife. It's a small world. Who would have thought that one of his colleagues was at the same coffee shop, overhearing the entire conversation from start to finish? I heard through the grapevine that he's frantically trying to find a new partner, terrified of facing old age alone. Who was that guy? When Mr. Johnson asked me about it later, I told him the whole story. I'm sorry for involving you in all this. The truth is... I see. You've had quite the ordeal, Lisa. The part about me dating Mr. Johnson was a complete lie. I had asked him to play along with the charade. Sorry for all the trouble. No worries, Lisa. I'm glad I could be of help. By the way, do you have any plans after this? Excuse me? How about grabbing something to eat if you'd like? Caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events, I was a little flustered. A fresh start in my mid-40s. This isn't such a bad beginning. Yes, I'd love to. I was certain a fun-filled future was awaiting me. I couldn't shake off this feeling.
Still infertile? My son is a genius and looks just like me. Then let me introduce you to my son. What? Matthew was shocked, thinking I couldn't possibly have a son. We divorced 15 years ago. I had unexpectedly bumped into my ex-husband after 15 years. And to make things more complicated, I saw him with the woman who was the reason for our divorce. That's when he introduced me to his son, who he said was 15. So I introduced him to my son as well. Matthew seemed surprised, not expecting that I had remarried. Since Matthew and I only had a daughter together, his shock was evident. But as I tried to leave, Matthew and Amelia started to brag and show off to me. Little did they know they were about to uncover a shocking truth, turning the situation into a complete mess. My name is Madison. I'm 45 with a history of divorce. Now I'm happily remarried. After remarrying, we had one more child, making us a family of 5 with 2 daughters and a son. My daughters are from my previous marriage. My son, now 14, is in middle school. His name is Jeffrey. The names of my daughters are Lily, the eldest, who is 19, and Aria, the younger one, who is 18. Both my daughters and my son are my pride and joy. Lily is currently studying abroad at a university, and Aria attends a prestigious high school. They chose their paths themselves, without any influence from me. Inspired by his sisters, Jeffrey grew up full of curiosity. Though only half-siblings, the 3 of them are very close. My current husband's name is Andrew. He's somewhat of a celebrity in certain business circles. This is my family now. Today, Jeffrey and I were out shopping in preparation for his study abroad. Jeffrey wears a hat and mask outside for certain reasons. Though many people wear masks nowadays, Jeffrey stands out due to his height. While shopping, Jeffrey seemed to bump into an acquaintance and asked, "Mom, can I go grab coffee?" "Sure, honey, I'll continue shopping then." He entered a cafe. Jeffrey, mature for a middle schooler, has many adult friends, and I believe the person he met was a college student. As I shopped alone, enjoying it for the first time in a while, someone suddenly called out to me, "Is that you, Madison?" "What?" I turned around and there stood the man I had hoped I'd never see again. My ex-husband. His name is Matthew. He's 3 years older than me, so he must be 48 now. "Hey, how are you? You've really changed. You used to be so plain." "Is that so? Well, goodbye then." "Hey, wait a minute." I wanted to leave quickly. I had nothing more to say to Matthew. I met Matthew at a party. He was quite forward, and I, being serious and cautious, was drawn to him. Matthew pursued me aggressively. Friends warned me he was just playing around, but I was flattered by his attention. A first for me. I found myself falling for him more and more. So, on our second date, I agreed to start a relationship. Matthew was overjoyed, like a child who had just received a toy, and it thrilled me. I used to think he wasn't reckless, but rather someone who genuinely expressed his emotions. Looking back, love really is blind. Our relationship was going well. I was only 25 at the time, and found the idea of an older man appealing. However, Matthew was very sociable and always surrounded by women, which worried me. I think I was trying to punch above my weight. There were times when loving him became exhausting. So when Matthew proposed, I was ecstatic, believing I would finally be happy. Matthew and I wanted children right after getting married. We rented a spacious apartment, thinking of our future family. I got pregnant soon after the wedding. We were overjoyed. But when I told Matthew the baby's gender, "What, a girl, really?" he was visibly disappointed. "You wanted a boy?" "Of course, I don't need a girl." "Why, girls are cute too." "Cute isn't the point. They're just not worth raising." "That's terrible." I was shocked. I had never felt such a difference in values before. From then on, he didn't touch my belly. He didn't help at all as my pregnancy progressed. It became too hard, so I went back to my parents to prepare for the birth. Then our daughter was born. Matthew didn't attend the birth. Even my parents were angry about that. I stayed with them for about 3 months before returning home. But Matthew wasn't welcoming. Instead, "You're back already?" he said. Even while I was feeding our daughter, he'd say things like, "Why a girl? I wanted a boy." "Don't say that. She's a cute girl." "She's not cute." "Maybe the next one will be a boy." "It better be." I researched everything I could to have a boy, even trying old wives' tales and gender selection methods. The next year, I was pregnant again, but it was another girl. I was happy with 2 girls. They were adorable. I loved dressing them in matching outfits. But Matthew was cold to our daughters. "Hey, stop wasting money. You bought more clothes, didn't you?" "They weren't that expensive." "But 2 the same? That's extravagant." Gradually, Matthew began to take his frustrations out on me. "Why can't we have a boy? Is there something wrong with you?" "Girls are great too." "I want a son." He'd say this in front of our daughters without a second thought, making me not want to talk about the kids with Matthew. I think the girls, even being young, could sense what their dad was saying. I poured all my love into them, making up for their dad's absence. Matthew's behavior escalated. He'd yell at the kids for playing inside, and our fights became incessant. "Be quiet, go away, I'm tired from work, you're a nuisance." "Hey, don't talk like that. Why not play with them?" "They don't like me, and they're not cute." "How can you say that? They'd be closer if you tried. Don't say such things in front of them." "They won't understand, it's okay. They seem dumb anyway." I couldn't tolerate this. I took the kids and went to my parents' house for a few days, expecting a call from Matthew. He did call, but not to apologize. "You're neglecting your duties at home. Come back immediately." "You can do it yourself." "Who do you think provides for you? Do what you're supposed to." Regrettably, I was on maternity leave, depending on my husband's income. I had no choice but to obey him. I wanted to leave my daughters with my parents, but it was too much to ask of them. I didn't want to be apart from my girls, so we returned together. Finally back? Clean up this mess. The house was a disaster. Food left out, trash everywhere, laundry untouched. Lily, still young, helped me clean up. Arya tried to appease Matthew. They were only 4 and 3 years old. I knew something had to change, but I didn't know what to do. Eventually I returned to work, but with reduced hours and lower pay. I had to rely on Matthew. I endured for the sake of our livelihood. I didn't have the courage to become a single mother with 2 daughters, but Matthew's behavior towards the girls worsened. You're in the way. Go somewhere else when I'm off. I witnessed him saying this to our daughters. I thought I might have reached my limit. Divorce crossed my mind. Afraid of ending up on the streets, I first changed jobs to prepare for divorce. The president of the new company sympathized with my situation and accommodated my needs until the divorce. I decided to divorce soon after starting the new job. Hey, let's get a divorce. That's what Matthew suddenly said to me. I was considering divorce too, but his bluntness caught me off guard. He had been thinking about divorcing me as well, so this seemed like a good opportunity, a chance for an amicable divorce. I'll take custody of the children. Fine, take them. I felt uneasy about Matthew's attitude. A woman's intuition prompted me to hire a detective, a suggestion from the new company's president, who even advanced the cost. Of course, I planned to repay it later. I was referred to a detective by an acquaintance. The detective quickly uncovered the truth. Matthew had a mistress named Amelia, a younger woman. To my shock, Amelia was pregnant. The child was likely Matthew's. Hurry up and sign the divorce papers. There's something I need to tell you first. I revealed everything I learned from the detective. You snooped around behind my back? So what? Isn't the real issue that you've been deceiving us all this time? He became enraged as I continued to confront him. It's your fault for only giving birth to girls. What's that supposed to mean? Amelia, see, is having a boy. She's fulfilling my wishes, unlike you. It's only natural I prioritize her. Why did you start an affair before she got pregnant? That's because you seemed defective and I lost interest in you. I'm popular with women, you know. Matthew justified his infidelity without any remorse, blaming me for having only girls. Such nonsense. I couldn't understand his obsession with having a son. Why are you so fixated on having a boy? Girls are stupid creatures. They can't earn money and won't bring anything back in the future. I hate the idea of spending money on them. I was furious. In an era of advancing women's rights, I couldn't believe I had married a man with such beliefs. I only filed for alimony in the divorce, enough to cover the detective's fee with a little extra. There was a reason for this. I wanted to get divorced quickly, for the sake of my daughters. Matthew was initially reluctant, and it seemed like we might need mediation with lawyers. I just wanted to get away from this man. I wanted to tell my daughters as soon as possible. That was my top priority. I haven't seen him since. No requests for visitation with the daughters either. And now, this unexpected reunion. Matthew wasn't alone. Behind him were Amelia and a boy, probably the child from back then. Amelia approached me, looking over. The boy behind her made a disgusted face. I couldn't tell if he was looking at me or Amelia. The boy is about the same age as Jeffrey. I believe in middle school. Yet there I was, feeling uncomfortable despite not being at fault.
Oh, is this Matthew's ex-wife?
Amelia scrutinized me, looking me up and down as if assessing my worth. What do you want?
Nothing.
I couldn't help but notice the boy's gaze, and Matthew caught that. This is my son, Kenneth. He's 15, and next year he'll be a high school student at a very prestigious school as a special scholarship student. That's wonderful. Congratulations. I managed to smile genuinely at Kenneth. Kenneth, surprisingly polite, nodded his head at me. He was a quiet-looking boy, wearing glasses, but clearly handsome. Kenneth said something to Amelia and then walked away. I inadvertently found myself observing Matthew and Amelia.
What?
Your son doesn't resemble either of you.
What? That's rude.
He looks a little like his mother, though. I knew I was being impolite, but he didn't look anything like Matthew. I wanted to leave, so I refrained from saying more. Well, I should be going. Wait, you're still infertile, right? My son's a genius and looks just like me. Infertile? What are you talking about? I stopped, irritated. You said you're infertile, right?
What do you mean? We have 2 daughters, remember?
If you can't have boys, it's the same as being infertile.
I was dumbfounded by his absurd logic. Even after 15 years, he hadn't changed at all. This disappointment wasn't about expecting anything from him, but a faint hope that he might have become a decent person. For our daughters, who will always have him as their biological father, I hoped he wouldn't be so spiteful. But that hope crumbled in an instant.
You really haven't changed. What do you mean by that?
Exactly what I said.
Anyway, I finally have the son I've always wanted. Now I'm truly happy.
That's great for you. As I tried to leave again, this couple seemed determined not to let me go. Just when I thought they had more to say, Amelia pulled out a photo. It was probably Kenneth, around 3 years old, posing like a model. The photo was worn, indicating it was frequently handled.
He's cute.
Right? He did some modeling when he was little.
I see.
I responded politely, maintaining my facade, but Amelia's next words shattered my composure. Well, your daughters are pretty plain, aren't they?
Excuse me?
Just saying.
She looked at me with a smirk. You don't know anything about my daughters.
I don't, but I can imagine.
Please don't make assumptions. Amelia, smug with victory, began bragging about her son. Scouted in the park when he was little, receiving top-tier education. She rambled on, even though I hadn't asked. What exactly is top-tier education anyway? Who decides what qualifies as top-tier?
Being a single mother must lower the educational standard, huh? Your poor children.
I couldn't contain my anger anymore. You seem to have a misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding?
First off, I'm remarried. What? I remarried soon after our divorce. I worked hard supporting my 2 children as a single mother, but my current husband is the president of the company that supported me during the divorce. He's a businessman. I worked at his newly established company initially, but he has since handed over the presidency to someone else. He heads a group of companies. I only learned about this after we started dating. What's your last name now?
Smith. Why?
The Smith Group?
Yes.
Amelia was speechless. I didn't know about this, said Matthew.
Why should I report to you?
What about Lily and Aria?
They're part of the Smith family now. My husband adores them.
I shared that Lily was studying business abroad. Matthew seemed surprised when I mentioned the university. Lily wants to help with my husband's business, so she's studying abroad. Your salary wouldn't have allowed for international studies. Thanks for the divorce. What do you mean by that? You divorcing me allowed me to meet my husband. I don't hold a grudge against you. Matthew's face twisted in frustration as I said this with a smile.
But even if she's smart, a girl's looks are important.
Lily was actually chosen as Miss Campus this year. Matthew quickly searched for Lily's university. A beautiful woman in a white dress appeared on the screen. That's Lily.
No way.
Good thing she doesn't look like her dad. Amelia's face twisted in frustration, just like Matthew's.
But the eldest is a fluke, and the younger one's probably a delinquent. The second child always turns out bad.
Aria's doing well. She's been accepted to a famous university.
And which high school does she go to?
Clover High School.
No way, better than our child.
Well, your son is amazing too, being a scholarship student, but Clover High School is a girls' school, so he can't attend. Amelia wanted to say something, but only twisted her face in frustration. Competing over children's achievements seemed pointless. Matthew looked shocked, opening and closing his mouth like a fish. But when our eyes met, he said, "What? You must have paid off the school with under-the-table money." I couldn't let that slide. These were my daughters he was talking about. Both of them chose and worked hard for their schools. They never even asked to go to tutoring. They were no trouble at all. Lily and Aria couldn't rely on their dad for affection after I remarried. They probably developed a habit of not depending on a father figure. However, my new husband made repeated efforts to connect with Lily and Aria. Gradually, they began to open up to him as if he were their real dad. For Lily, a turning point was when he took her to his workplace, leading her to express interest in studying business management. He then suggested an overseas university to middle school-aged Lily, mentioning its diverse student body and unique programs. Lily researched what she needed to learn and which high schools to attend to get into that university. After rigorous studying, she successfully got into her desired high school. We didn't interfere at all.
The only thing she asked us for was to study abroad, and we happily supported her decision.
They got into such prestigious schools without tutoring?
That's exactly what I'm saying. How much money did I spend on my son?
It's fine. Thanks to you, he grew up well. He'll surely pay you back.
Sure, he will. This couple seemed to expect some sort of return from their child, which I found pitying. But it's none of my business what happens in other families. But Arya went to tutoring, right? No, she didn't. Arya, influenced by her sister, hasn't found what she wants to do yet, but she's been studying hard. She's currently into basketball. What's the point in doing something that doesn't make money? What does this man think children are for? They're not raised to become future money bringers. Did you want a boy just because you thought he'd bring you money in the future? It's not like that. I hit the nail on the head. I truly made the right decision divorcing this man. Then Jeffrey called. I told him where I was and hung up.
Is Mr. Smith coming?
What are you happy about?
I just want to meet him.
Amelia seemed eager with ulterior motives, but I had no intention of introducing them to my husband. No, I'm meeting someone else. Goodbye.
Wait, are you running away?
No. That's when Jeffrey arrived. I'll introduce you to my son. What? I reluctantly introduced Jeffrey to them. He was still wearing his hat and mask.
Your son?
Yes, he is my husband and my son. He's in 8th grade. But you only had girls. Jeffrey seemed irritated by Matthew's remark and asked me, Mom, who's this rude guy? He's my ex-husband, and that's his wife. Huh. Jeffrey's attitude seemed to have angered Matthew, who burst out in rage. What's with this rude kid? At least take off your hat and mask when greeting someone. No, he has a reason for not being able to take them off. Then Matthew started to smirk in a mocking way. I had a bad feeling about this. Ugly enough to hide your face, huh? Your new husband must be ugly too. Our daughters turned out pretty like me, but I guess your son wasn't so lucky. What are you talking about? My husband is so handsome. He's been featured in magazines. Really? Then your son must look like you.
That's right. Unfortunately, he got Mom's ugly genes. Such a waste, especially since he's so tall.
I was appalled that they could say such things in front of their middle school-aged child. I didn't want to leave Jeffrey as their prey, and was about to make an excuse to leave when suddenly Jeffrey took off his hat and mask. I apologize for not greeting you properly without taking off my hat. Matthew and Amelia were struck speechless. Even the people passing by stopped in their tracks.
Are you?
Turns out, Jeffrey is an up-and-coming actor. With a mature, sweet face, he became popular quickly, despite being in middle school. He's even considering going abroad and studying in a foreign middle school, as part of the plan. This is a well-known story, even mentioned in online articles. Though it's actually because of his sister's influence, the media wrote it differently.
But the name is so different.
So I changed it. It's starting to get out there, but please don't spread it around too much.
Is he really your child, not a stepchild?
That's right, 14 years old. That's right after a divorce. Yes, I married right after divorcing you.
But he doesn't look like you.
People often say Jeffrey and I look alike. He's definitely my son. Just then, Kenneth returned. Seeing Jeffrey, Kenneth's face lit up with a smile. What's going on? Kenneth! Apparently, they knew each other.
You two know each other?
Yeah. Unexpectedly, they were acquaintances. Jeffrey attended Kenneth's dance school for 2 weeks on the agent's recommendation. They seem to have gotten along well, being close in age. So, does that mean you and I are half-brothers? When Jeffrey said that, Kenneth angrily retorted. No way, don't even think that I'm the son of a man like him. This was a shock to me. Kenneth realized he had spoken too impulsively. Hey, Kenneth, what do you mean by that? Kenneth sighed and looked at Amelia. Amelia was frantically shaking her head. What's going on? Ignoring Amelia's protests, Kenneth revealed a shocking truth. I'm not this man's son. What the heck are you saying? Kenneth glared at Matthew with a look of utter disdain. It seemed that Matthew, despite his desire for a son, had a rotten character, and this sentiment had been passed down to Kenneth. It appeared that Kenneth had disliked Matthew from a young age. All he does is complain about work, and he's always reeking of alcohol. There's nothing about him I could respect. Kenneth felt a deep aversion to being the son of such a man. He even confessed to his mother that he found it repulsive to have any blood relation with Matthew. Then,
Don't worry, your real father is someone else,
Amelia revealed. She had sworn Kenneth to secrecy for the sake of their livelihood.
What? What does that mean?
No, nothing. Kenneth, stop joking around. Amelia was clearly panicking.
But our blood types are completely different. I'm type A. Aren't both of you type O? That's a lie. It's true.
And Kenneth pointed to a nearby blood donation poster.
Why don't we go donate blood and find out?
He said. Stop it! Amelia screamed in a frenzy. So that's what it was. It made sense why Kenneth didn't resemble them. He wasn't their child. Amelia was involved with Matthew and another man at the time, but she couldn't marry the other man. So she told Matthew that he was the father and married him. Matthew, realizing the truth, turned bright red with anger. He seemed to be trembling with rage.
You're saying he's not my son? What does that mean?
It's not what you think. There's a reason for it.
What reason?
Matthew didn't care that there were people around. Rather, he seemed oblivious to his surroundings. He yelled at Amelia loudly.
So you've been deceiving me all this time?
No, there's a reason for it, but even if there's no blood relation, Kenneth has always adored you like a real dad.
It didn't look like adoration at all.
You've always believed and raised him as your own son, but isn't it unusual not to notice for 15 years? It's proof that you haven't really engaged with your child.
Shut up, it's none of your business.
You're right, it's none of my business, so I'll be leaving. I realized a crowd had gathered around us. Not wanting Jeffrey to be involved in this, I decided to leave Matthew and Amelia arguing. Many people seemed interested in their quarrel, which worked in our favor. We'll be going then. Matthew, no longer paying attention to us, was shouting at a crying Amelia, begging for forgiveness. Kenneth was the only one who waved to us. His eyes seemed to say, "Please go now." We quickly hailed a taxi and escaped.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's fine, Mom, I'm okay.
Jeffrey comforted me, patting my back. Later, Jeffrey told me he had encountered Kenneth. Matthew, furious upon learning he'd been deceived for 15 years, presented Amelia with divorce papers. They ended up divorcing after much turmoil. Amelia, who'd always been a housewife, didn't want to work and was reluctant to divorce Matthew. Do you think I can start working now?
That's not my problem.
Matthew coldly brushed off Amelia's pleas. Kenneth was initially taken in by Amelia, but not trusting her, he ended up being adopted by his grandparents. His grandparents declared that they would cut ties with Amelia, their daughter, so she couldn't see her son anymore. Kenneth, of course, refused to see her too. Now Amelia works as a day laborer at a factory to make ends meet. Both Matthew and Amelia ended up alone. Worried about his old age, Matthew kept showing up in front of Kenneth. It's pathetic to discuss such matters with a middle schooler, especially since they're now complete strangers with no blood connection. Kenneth said he had no fond memories of playing with Matthew, nor did he actively participate in school events. So Kenneth found it troublesome to suddenly have Matthew act like a dad. Rejected by everyone, Amelia later went to apologize to Matthew. Please, let's start over, just the two of us.
How can I trust you? Don't ever show your face to me again.
Amelia, fearing loneliness, tried to get close to Matthew, but he rejected her. Matthew, on his part, grumbled about having to pay child support for a son who wasn't his.
He's not even my real son,
he says as he works. Legally, he was obligated to pay, since Kenneth was registered as his son. Kenneth's grandparents, very responsible people, had a lawyer handle these matters. Learning that Kenneth was happy with his grandparents was a relief. Despite 15 years, I was somewhat downhearted that such issues resurfaced. My husband and children were concerned about me. I apologized to Jeffrey for causing him any discomfort, but Jeffrey was composed, saying it wasn't my fault, and that the present was what mattered. This was something my daughters often said, and it brought tears to my eyes. I don't know if I was a good mom, but I can say with pride that all my children are wonderful. Currently, Jeffrey lives abroad with his sister Lily. He respects Lily, and his decision to study abroad was likely influenced by her. When they returned for Christmas, Jeffrey's sisterly love can be troubling, Lily said with a laugh. Seeing my husband and our 3 siblings together and happy made me feel the joy anew. I don't know how many more times we can gather like this, but I want to cherish each occasion.